exposed ISI China operation regime change in Bangladesh. Drafted in London, executed in Dhaka. BNP chief Khalida's son met ISI agents. Toolkit here was that flood of anti-Hasina posts on X or Twitter. ISI helped Jamaat student wing hatch this unrest. Student protest was weaponized for a coup. Sole aim of the ISI was to depose Hasina, bring back Zia. China fanned and funded the Dhaka stir. US-based handles amplified this narrative against Sheikh Hasina. Islamic Chatta Shivir infiltrated the student stir. Inside ISI China plot to overthrow Hasina. We're getting you all the details of the big story that we're breaking at this hour. How this has been a conspiracy that had been hatched by ISI and China put together. This was actually drafted in London and executed in Dhaka, with the BNP chief and Khalida Zia's son who had met up with the ISI agents to hatch this conspiracy. And this was the toolkit here. Flood of anti-Hasina posts on Twitter or X. ISI helped Jamaat student wing hatch this unrest. Student protest was weaponized for a coup. The sole aim of the ISI was to depose Hasina and bring back Khalida Zia. China fanned it and also funded Dhaka stir is what we are picking up. This is in fact also US-based handles amplified the narrative against Sheikh Hasina. Remember, it all started with a student stir, but who was behind it? Islamic Chatta Shivir, which inflated the student stir. This is the ISC group. Inside ISI, China plot to overthrow Sheikh Hasina. This is the question that was asked also by the leader of the opposition today in the meeting back here in India, when the Prime Minister had in fact, or the government had called for an all-party meeting. Rahul Gandhi did ask this question about a foreign hand in this stir, to which India has indicated that there is no clear indication just yet. However, this is the story we are getting at this. I'm going to go straight across to Gaurav Sawant, who's tracking this big story. Gaurav, it was but obvious that this stir and this unrest, would have not been possible without, this being orchestrated by China and Pakistan put together. As we've seen that China and ISI, of course, have come together to plan this unrest in Bangladesh, isn't it?
You know, India Today's Jitendra Bahadur Singh and Shivangi have been able to put together a lot of inputs that have come in the past 48 hours that seem to indicate that this was a very well-planned operation. As far as this so-called student unrest is concerned, yes, there was student anger, yes, there was student unrest, but a lot of Jamaat-e-Islami cadres and their student wing, they had infiltrated into various universities for over a year. And then they systematically started a movement. Social media sites like TikTok, certain videos were broadcast much wider. Snapchat, other social media platforms, they were used to send across a message to students, and that is how students were galvanized in a very large number. But it wasn't just the Jamaat-e-Islami, it was also other opposition parties. The BNP, for example, how their cadre, how their social media handles, they were used very extensively, how tweet storms were created, how TikTok storms in a way were created, and all of that has been collated together. In fact, Sheikh Hasina had warned against it. Sheikh Hasina, of course, went to the other extreme where she called the protesters razakars or words to that effect, and that also angered the students. So the real students were angered, or as many argue, were misused or used by radical Islamists who rode that wave, ousted Sheikh Hasina, and now hope to use this to come back to power in Bangladesh, where again minority Hindus are also being systematically targeted. So this was almost like a military operation that was undertaken to oust Sheikh Hasina through the back door, what is now being hailed as victory of democracy and student power. It was student power, according to the information that our reporters have been able to glean, that was used or harnessed to orchestrate a regime change.
All right, be with us, Gaurav. I'm just going to come back to you in a moment from now, bringing in Sushant Sareen also in this conversation, strategic affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your time. Any surprises there? Are you even surprised about what we're reporting about the ISI China operation regime change in Bangladesh. This was a plot that was hatched, we understand, in London, where Khalida Zia's son had also, in fact, met with the ISI, and all of this was planned over a period of a couple of months or so. Almost 2 years is what we understand, sir.
Look, I think the gainers are going to be China and Pakistan, but to a great extent, what has happened in Bangladesh has been orchestrated by the Americans. They have been pushing the Bangladeshi government, Sheikh Hasina and others. They have been putting sanctions on them. The Americans never put sanctions on Pakistan, where elections were stolen, where the army is brutalizing the people. They never imposed any sanctions out there. And suddenly, who were the people in the United States who were lobbying for these sanctions on the Awami League? It was the Jamaat Islami and the BNP. So it's very easy to blame China and Pakistan. Of course, they are going to be the beneficiaries of what has happened. And America is gifting Bangladesh on a platter to the Chinese and the Americans. But I don't think you can absolve the Americans for what has been happening in Bangladesh. We've seen how they have used their own people. Where has this demand for Mohammad Yunus becoming the Prime Minister or the head of the caretaker government come from? Where is it coming from?
Okay.
You know, these old men with ambitions who want to rule countries and hobnob with other people to do that. I think that is where the nub of the problem lies. And it's ecosystem which has been at play in Bangladesh. But of course, that ecosystem is not really going to benefit, because as we have seen from other examples in the world, that the people who will actually benefit from it are the Pakistanis, who the Jamaat Islami has sworn fealty to, and the Chinese, who are the masters of both Pakistan and the Jamaat. So that is the trajectory in which things are moving, and it's very unfortunate that Bangladesh is going to go through these convulsions again. It's not going to augur well for Bangladesh. Their economy is going to go into a tailspin. And I don't think anybody who thinks that this is the path to democracy and liberal and progressive values coming into Bangladesh, I think they need to get their head examined.
All
It's
right.
as simple as that.
So, Shantarine, I'm going to thank you for putting that into perspective. I'm going to go back to Gaurav for more on that. Gaurav, an important point that Mr. Sareen, beg your pardon, has also raised about the US's involvement in all of this. We, of course, do know that the relationship between Sheikh Hasina and the US had nosedived to a great point, and also the manner in which a social media narrative was created over a period of time that was being fueled indeed by the West, wasn't it?
Well, the social media, being used as a threat. In fact, that's a study for multiple democracies, because outside powers, being involved in a regime change operation and using big tech remains one of the biggest challenges for democracies, including powerful democracies like India. But be that as it may, you're absolutely right, Sushant Sareen, raising the point about Western powers, especially the Central Intelligence Agency, being accused of trying to orchestrate a regime change in Bangladesh. As far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned, while she was quite strong with India and she was trying to bring about a lot of changes in her own country, there were some allegations that were being made that she also tried, as some argue, to use China against India or play that China card, and all of that remains a cause for grave concern. As far as India is concerned, one, India adopts a wait-and-watch policy because it is for the people of Bangladesh to decide what they want next. At the same time, being a neighbor and being a powerful neighbor, it is India's responsibility to ensure, one, the situation does not spiral out of control. India has very good friends across in Bangladesh, and not just Sheikh Hasina. Two, it is also to ensure that minorities are not targeted, especially Hindus are not targeted in Bangladesh, the manner in which they are being targeted. But the bigger concern is this cover fire that is being given to radical Islamists. Those who are trying to say this is out and out a students' movement against Sheikh Hasina. Yes, it is a students' movement, but a students' movement that has been hijacked by radical Islamists to ride the students' anger to power in Bangladesh, and radical Islamists taking over Bangladesh will be detrimental even for Bangladesh's own interest, but equally important for India's interest in our northeast and in the eastern part of our country. So all these developments need to be watched very carefully, and those who are giving cover fire to regime change operations, a hawkeye needs to be kept on their actions and their intentions.
Well, absolutely. This has great repercussions for India and particularly the northeastern part of the country, like Gaurav pointed out. I'm just going to come back to you in a moment from now. Let's now talk about the Islamist student group, which has been the mastermind of all of this. It has been a students' movement, we understand, but Islamic Chhatra Shivir, which is Jamaat-e-Islami's student wing that has been behind this coup that was organized. Massive presence in Dhaka and Chittagong universities. They filled it. These universities is what our reporters from the ground have been telling us. The Islamic Chhatra Shivir behind the overthrow of Sheikh Hasina. Now, ISI's cadre incited the university students over a period of time, over 2 years is what my colleague Jitendra was telling us earlier. Brainwashed the university students into protest. Gaurav, essentially this was what you were touching upon, that this has been a students' movement. It all started with unemployment and other concerns. But the very fact that ICS infiltrated this, not one but a handful of universities, particularly in the Chittagong region, essentially provoking the students here and ensuring that the situation only worsens. This was the modus operandi, Gaurav.
So the Islamic Chhatra Shivir is an organization that Sheikh Hasina had warned about. She cautioned about their activities. Multiple universities from the Dhaka University to 6 other universities that have been listed out from information that we've been able to glean. Students infiltrated in these universities. The Islamic Chhatra Shivir members infiltrated these universities, joined various courses, and over a period of a year and a half. So unemployment, one aspect. Most important, what was the trigger? The trigger was the quota reservation, the reservation, and that actually sparked off massive agitation. Unemployment issues fueled it. These students mobilized it. Social media was used very extensively, including TikTok. So when TikTok becomes important is because that is where China's role becomes very, very important. Use of big tech to send a certain kind of messages on your mobile phones, and that's brainwashing an individual over months, and a sustained campaign. That brought students out on the streets, that brought others out on the streets, and TikTok is being blamed to a very large extent of galvanizing people to take to the streets to bring about a regime change. But will this regime change actually benefit Bangladesh in the long run? Perhaps those students and agitators will only realize that the consequences of their actions in the long run. But then those who rode piggyback on them, the Jamaat-e-Islami, Begum Khalida Zia's party, the fact that ISI and her son and several other party leaders were having detailed meetings in the United Kingdom, all of that will lead to Bangladesh going down a road that will be rather unfortunate, not just for Bangladesh, but also for India's northeastern region, our eastern part, and our country in general.
All right, Gaurav, I'm going to thank you for the moment. Gaurav Sawant putting that story into perspective about how this entire conspiracy was hatched.